Week 17 of the fantasy football season, and right now the championship here, most fantasy leagues, or the semifinal. Here's a few quarterbacks. I looked at off the wire this week. The first guy, Joe Flacco, the Cleveland Browns. Says Joe Flacco, what a resurgence it's been for him this season, where he was pretty much out of the league and just trying to latch on, and he did this season with the Cleveland Browns later in the season. So the last 4 weeks since he's been the starter for this Brown team. Week 13 at the Rams, 254 pass yards, 2 touchdowns and INT. Week 14 versus Jacksonville, 311 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, an INT, a fumble loss. Week 15 versus the Bears, 374 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 INTs. And Week 16 at Houston, another big game, 368 passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 2-point conversion. So right now, Joe Flacco, he's throwing the football great. This week, I know it's a tough matchup versus former team, the New York Jets. I give up the least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. But Joe Flacco, he's not scared to go out there and just air it out. I know he's turning the football over a lot, but he's going over 300 yards a lot, and he's at least had 20 or more fantasy points in every game he started this season here in the last few weeks. So Joe Flacco right now, well, he's available in 67% of fantasy leagues. I know it's the toughest matchup to date for him. He's still a quarterback I looked at this week. The next quarterback, Derek Carr, of the New Orleans Saints. Carr, he's been on this list a lot this season here. And this week, a pretty good matchup at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They give up the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So the last few weeks here for Carr, it's been pretty decent numbers. Week 14 versus Carolina, 119 pass yards, 2 touchdowns and INT. Week 15 versus the Giants, 218 pass yards, 3 touchdowns in that ball game. And Week 16, one of the better games of the season for Carr, 319 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, and a 2-point conversion. So this week, a good matchup at division rival Tampa Bay. Obviously, it's December, but the weather's still nice over there in Tampa Bay. And I know Tampa, they've tightened the screws over the last few weeks defensively, but I still think Carr and this offense could go out there and put in a big performance. You got good weapons, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. He's definitely emerged over the last few weeks. And once again, while Carr's out in 61% of fantasy leagues, he's a quarterback to add this week. The next quarterback, Easton Stick, Los Angeles Chargers. So maybe more of a deeper league ad is Easton Stick. But the last 2 weeks since he's been the quarterback with Justin Herbert out for the season, he's gone out there and he's actually put up some serviceable numbers. Week 15 in Vegas, 257 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, 2 fumble losses. And Week 16 versus Buffalo in a tougher matchup, 215 pass yards, 25 rush yards, and a rushing touchdown. So he's got some wheels a little bit, is Easton Stick. And this week, a pretty good matchup at the Broncos. They give up the 9th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So Stick, he's trying to be a backup at least for next season. We know Herbert is going to come back and be the starting quarterback, but at least this kid, he's got some knowledge of the playbook, and he can move the football down the field. So right now, if you're in a pinch in 2 quarterback leagues, or the deepest of leagues here, he's available in 98% of fantasy leagues. The next quarterback's Nick Mullins of the Minnesota Vikings. So Nick Mullins, he's going out there and he's putting up a lot of yards on the board the first 2 weeks since he's been a starter. Week 15 at Cincinnati, 303 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 10 rush yards. In Week 16 versus Detroit, 411 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, but 4 interceptions. So Nick Mullins, he's been a gunslinger in this offense. He's been taking a lot of chances. And when you got wide receivers like Justin Jefferson, obviously Jordan Addison, even though he left this game, and Hawkinson as well, a tight end who left this game, he's been putting the football up for grabs, and the Lions did get him for 4 interceptions. But right now, Mullins, he lets the football fly, and at least he's putting up yards and getting the football to his playmakers. So right now, a decent matchup in Week 17 versus Green Bay. They give up the 16th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. We just saw Bryce Young go out there and have the best game of his career. So Nick Mullins in deeper leagues, if you need a quarterback, he's available in 87% of fantasy leagues. And the 5th and final quarterback I look to get off the wall is C.J. Beathard of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So each week it seems like now Trevor Lawrence is getting injured, but he's come out and played the last 2 weeks. A few weeks ago it was with the ankle, then the concussion last week he played, but he left this game in Week 16 was Trevor Lawrence with a shoulder injury on his throwing arm. So Beathard came in garbage time, and he looked all right. 94 pass yards, a touchdown, and 6 rush yards. So Week 17, a decent matchup versus the Carolina Panthers. We know they're one of the worst teams in the league, and their defense really can't stop anyone. So if you're in 2 quarterback leagues as well, or the deepest of leagues, and if Trevor Lawrence is out, Beathard out there in 99% of fantasy leagues, that's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire in a crucial Week 17 of the fantasy football season.